Hi, if you like the video, please remember to subscribe.
Hi, it's Rob from robnunphoto.com and the Subject Composition and Light Photography podcast with a quick video about the Canon 50mm 1.8 EF lens Mark II version that I've got on my Canon 350D at the moment. The 50mm is I think it's the cheapest prime lens. It might even be the cheapest lens that Canon do, and it's well recommended for everybody to have one in their bag because it's very, very cheap and you can do some really cool things. As I said, it's a prime lens, which means it's a fixed focal length, so you've got no zoom here at all. So if you want to make your subject bigger or smaller, you've got to move backwards and forwards, but the beauty with your feet, that is. But the beauty with a prime lens is because they're fairly simple to make, they can make them very, very cheap, and also they can put a really nice big aperture on it. So let's start off with that. So why would you want the 50mm? Well, to start off with, it's cheap, it's sharp as well, and it's got a maximum aperture or maximum hole in the front of it of f1.8, which is huge. That lets a massive amount of light in, so that's really good for any sort of photography where the light isn't so great, where you're hand holding and you need to keep your shutter speed up. But it's also really good for depth of field effects. So if you want the sort of look where your subject is in focus but everything else is really blurred, then f1.8 or apertures around that is really, really good. The other point as well about having a lens that goes down to 1.8 is not that you shoot at 1.8 all the time, but rather the fact that it's sharper at some of the other apertures. So what that means is lenses, as you go through the aperture range, so from being sort of wide open sort of thing to really small where they're letting in a little bit of light, what happens is they get more or less blurry. And what you find is lenses are at their most blurry or not sharp at the extremes, so say 1.8 with this one or f22 at the other end, but they get sharper in the middle. And there's lots of different theories about what the best f-stop is. Sometimes people say it's 2 stops down from open or in the middle, but what it really means is if you're shooting with the 50mm 1.8 at f3.5 or 5.6 or f8 for example, it will be sharper, so your pictures will be a lot clearer than the equivalent zoom lens. So that's really, really nice. The other good thing about the 50mm is the fact that because it is a prime, you do have to move around a lot with your feet, so it teaches you not just to stand in one place and zoom around. It's also a nice small lens and incredibly light. I mean, the build quality is cheap. We've got a plastic back, the body's plastic, and then everything else is glass, but it's a really, really light lens to have in your camera bag. So if you were like sort of say on a bike ride like I do, I like to take the 50mm on my camera simply because it cuts down the amount of weight I've got. As you can see, it's got a 52mm filter ring on the front. On the left hand side you've got the autofocus or manual focus, and if you go to manual focus you can then spin it. And it's worth noting that when it is in autofocus mode you can't manually focus. You could damage it if you do it like that. And if I turn the camera on, let's see if we can get it to do some focusing, see what happens. You should see it hunting around, but what I was trying to show you is the fact that the front element doesn't spin around like it does on some cheaper lenses. So if you've got a polarizing filter or any sort of filter on the front, that doesn't spin as the camera or you are focusing in and out. That's on manual focus now, so I can turn it backwards and forwards. Go back to autofocus. It's not the quietest lens, as you can hear. It makes a bit of a racket, it's going in and out, but what do you expect for underneath £100? A little bit more about the focal length as well. 50mm was often seen as the standard focal length because it's the lens that used to come with most old film SLRs, and it's pretty similar to the angle of view we see with our own eyes, so you don't get that much perspective distortion in it. However, when you're fitting it to a crop frame camera like my 350D or really any sort of SLR apart from the 5Ds and the D700s and the D3s of this world, the ones that use a full size sensor, it's not actually a 50mm, it's more like an 80mm lens, which makes it slightly telephoto compared to if it was on a film SLR. So it takes you into the scene a little bit further. So what that means is if you're doing landscapes and the like, you often have to back off quite a bit, like physically move backwards or do panoramas. So it's worth bearing in mind with that one, and I can't wait till Christmas when I get the 28mm version of this, the 28mm f2.8, to have a play with that way. But I would say if you haven't got one already, whether it be for your Canon, your Nikon, your Olympus, your Pentax or your Sony, definitely look at their 50mm lenses, their 50mm primes, because they're normally really, really cheap, really, really good quality, nice and light, and they're well worth having on the front of your camera, just like this Canon 50mm on the front of my 350D Rebel XT. Okay, well that's Rob from robnonphoto.com and the SCL Photo Podcast signing off, and thanks for watching.